Welcome to our May Arc Server Forum. Today we're going to have some special topics. I'm joined by Matumba and Aileen, and so we're going to have two main topics today. We're going to be talking really about some of our OS setting capabilities and CIS benchmark capabilities, as well as the Linux focus area that we're driving towards with Azure Arc and some of our initial thinking and explorations there. So I'm excited to have Matumba and Aileen share. And we're also excited to hear your feedback from what they share as well. So we really appreciate your participation and engagement here. With that, I wanted to quickly share the update that we did have our May agent release notes. There were a couple of agent fixes. There were a couple of feature enhancements in that. I want to make sure that you're staying with the latest agent version. That was a pretty recent update we had. So we did want to make sure you're all keeping track of the agent release notes and staying to the latest agent version, especially with all of the quality fixes that are coming with our agent releases. So with that, I'm actually going to pass it over to, I believe, Matumba, and he's going to share a little bit more about our unified inventory of server OS settings and some of the OS configuration capabilities coming up through machine configuration. So with that, I'll hand it over. Matumba, do you want to screen share? How do you want to do this?
I think what I'll do is I'll just share from my side so I can click through.
So,
Give me 1 second. Okay, hold on. Okay, awesome. I believe something should be loading up on everyone's screen right now. So it'll probably just take a second and then we should be good to go. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Arnav. Hi, everyone. My name is Mutemo Masheke. I'm a product manager on Azure Machine Config. I assume most of you are familiar with our service, but just holistically, what we do is we enable effective server configuration management for operating system settings, applications, and workloads across your environment. And this management experience is consistent across Linux and Windows and Azure VMs, as well as Arc-enabled servers. And so today we're just going to talk about two major scenarios that are on our roadmap and are coming really soon. The first one I wanted to talk about is, soon we'll be lighting up an availability of a unified inventory of server OS settings at scale. And so, the scenarios we're targeting for this experience is, in order for you to effectively assess and optimize your fleet management, for you to, verify network security, to ensure compliance in your environment. These experiences all require some level of default visibility into what the inventory of your different settings are on your machines. And in addition with that experience, we have the opportunity to make this available in Azure Resource Graph so that you can sort of put these over into separate dashboards using Power BI and other experiences in your environment so that you can write, declarative queries and be able to have an at-scale view on specific settings on your machines. And so just kind of quickly going over that, these are some of the settings we're targeting for our initial availability. Sorry, not for initial availability, but for our eventual availability. So, if there's any that jump out at you, please feel free to mention in the chat. I'll also place my email in the chat as well, so we can kind of continue the conversation. So these are some of the settings that we're, sort of thinking about for this feature. But as time goes on, we'll be able to provide publicly available documentation on what initial steps look like for our public preview and then eventually GA. So that's just one exciting scenario. And for folks who are using, inventory from, other, config management tooling, then this will be, some really nice enhanced feature parity for you to kind of have that functionality migrated over into machine config. So, the second thing that we also wanted to showcase is, over time, we've kind of observed that, the workflow that customers are using today is they assign an audit policy, like the Azure Windows Baseline, for example, which is CIS aligned. And then they create, custom policies in machine config to sort of then kind of fill in those compliance gaps that meet their, requirements. And in these scenarios, what we've seen a lot of customers seeking is they want to configure only the settings they want enforced and exclude the remainder from enforcement. They want to be able to leverage gradual rollout features that, Azure Policy provides, and basically consolidate all their CIS management that they're currently doing through group policy and other tools into one centralized tool that, leverages the same skill set and the basically the same experience to manage across your environments, regardless of whether it's Windows or Linux. And so we're excited to say that we'll be lighting up an experience soon to customize any built-in policy definition. And that will allow you to adhere both to internal and regulatory compliance requirements with one policy assignment. And so how this is achieved pretty much on a higher level is, being able to pass custom parameter values into supported configuration machine config policies. This experience, streamlines authoring from the Azure portal, but we'll also be able to provide artifacts as well for you to do as code solutions and deployments through your CI/CD pipelines, whether you're using GitHub or ADO. And so what I'll do now is I'll hand it over to Aline from the Arc team to kind of share more on what our UX experience looks like, just to give you a mental model. We're testing out various designs, and so what we're doing is trying to start the conversation early. And then we'll have much more, finalized, a much more finalized design workflow once we announce our public preview of this feature. And with that, I'll hand it over to Aline.
Thanks, Matuma. Appreciate that. I'm going to attempt to take control of your presentation now. And okay, it worked. Hey everybody, my name is Eileen. I'm another PM on the Azure Arc team, and I'll be going through what the current mockup for the CIS benchmark for Linux looks like. The CIS benchmark for Linux is heading into private preview in the next coming months, and so I'm excited to show you what it'll look like and what you can expect. All right, so here we are at the Azure policy page in Azure portal. You can see here that let me get my little laser here, so hopefully I can follow along here. All right, so we are in Azure policy in the machine configuration menu option here, and you can see under the definitions, we have a variety of CIS benchmark policy templates for various flavors of Linux distros. We're going to be covering the Azure endorsed Linux distros, which includes Alma Linux, Debian, Ubuntu, RHEL, SUSE, all that good stuff. And this is just a mock-up, so you're not going to see it all here, but it will be here come the private preview. And so what you'll be able to do from here is you can select the CIS benchmark for your Linux OS that you want to apply across your Azure VMs or your Arc-enabled Linux servers. And we'll take a look here as we dig into it. So one of the things that we heard from customers who use CIS benchmark for Linux is that there's about 100 different definitions and security configurations that make up the CIS benchmark, and you might not want all 100. Like, let's say there's about 5 that you want to tweak. And so the nice thing about having the CIS benchmark template in Azure Policy is that you can actually individualize each definition that you want. So you can customize it the way that you want. You're not going to have to fill out all 100. There's default settings that are applied. And if you want to make any customizations, you can do so in the machine configuration definition page here. So you can see here, we've got a variety of different CIS benchmark definitions, and you have the option to customize the defaults if you want. Okay, and because there's a lot of different security configurations that make up the CIS benchmark, this one is for Linux, there will be a nice little information icon next to the definition. You can go ahead and click on that, and a side pane window will open up, and it will give you more information about that definition. So everything that you need to apply the benchmark to your Azure VMs or your Arc-enabled Linux VMs will be available for you in here. All right, and then at the end, once you're done making all the customizations that you want, you can see a summary here to be aware of all the different changes that you've made. And you can save it as a copy of the default CIS benchmark. And then you can assign the policy to a scope setting. So you can scope it by all the VMs in a resource group. You can also include which VMs that you want to exclude. So that way everything is here for you to assign where you want it. And then you would just hit assign, and that's it. Your CIS benchmark is applied to on-prem, in the cloud, Azure VMs, and Arc-enabled Linux VMs. And this one is just focusing on Linux, but of course, there's going to be one for Windows as well. Okay, were there any questions about that mock-up? And it is a mock-up, so it may change after this presentation, but at least you get a little sneak peek there. Okay.
Is this going to be audit only or audit and set?
It'll be audit for the initial private preview, and then the machine configuration aspect of Azure Policy will actually let you apply the CIS benchmark to the OS level of the VM.
I just wanted to kind of add on to Aline's response as well. So we'll be targeting our full feature set. So for both audit and set will be supported as well.
Excellent.
Great. Yeah, that's great to hear. Hopefully you all are excited about that. So as Arnav mentioned, the Azure Arc team is looking to expand our services with a focus on our Linux customers. And so there's a bunch of different topics that we're exploring. And before I delve into all of that, I just want to get a quick show of hands. How many of you here have a Linux environment in your organization? Raise that digital Teams hand if you do. All right, lots of hands up. Okay, we've got 13 here, 11 here. I guess 2 of you got excited and raised your hands up early. And then I have another question for you all. So if you do have a Linux environment, do you already use a CIS benchmark as part of your security settings for your organization? If you do, go ahead and raise that hand again. Okay, looks like about half of you that have Linux environments use CIS benchmarks to manage your Linux machine. So cool, great. I'll go into the other exploratory features and capabilities that the Azure Arc team is looking into. These are more long-term feature sets that we have in mind. And so the 4 that I'll share with you today, 4, can I count right? 5. I'll just go into them. Okay, so one of them is we're looking to strengthen our security posture for Linux by having a centralized on-prem and cloud security experience for our Linux customers. So that's one thing that we're looking at with Azure, a combination of Azure Policy, Machine Config, Guest Config, and an up-and-coming Ops 360 and Defender story. So we'll see how that pans out. The other thing that we're also looking into is a centralized identity and access management story that we can offer to our Linux customers. So this might look like Entra single sign-on, and then being able to Arc enable your Linux VMs and use Entra single sign-on for your Linux machines. I see a hand up. Do you want to go ahead and, is that a question? Are you still just saying that you're a Linux customer? Okay. All right, I'll continue on. The other thing that we're looking into is offering on-prem RHEL licensing through Azure. And the next thing that we're looking at is a flexible switching between license offerings of Paygo and Bring Your Own Service for RHEL and SUSE on-prem. And the last thing that I'll mention here that we're looking into is adding more third-party Arc extensions for apps and services that are used by Linux customers. And so if you think any of these topics that I've mentioned here are of interest to you, I have a quick 5-question survey where you can tell us more about your Linux environment so we can understand your needs. You can tell us if any of these topics that I've brought up are of interest to you, and there's also a field for you to drop your contact info if it's okay for us to schedule a quick one-on-one discussion with you. So yeah, thank you so much. I'll go ahead and put the survey link in the chat as well. And that's all that I have. So I'll hand it back to Arnav. Oh, thanks, Arnav. Appreciate that.
Thanks so much, Aileen and Matumba. That was really exciting to see. And, I think both the CIS benchmark capability and just the broader Linux focus is really appreciated. I know we often talk about the Windows Server piece, but there's a lot of upcoming investment and focus on Linux as well. I think a few people had put questions in the chat. I'm not sure if others want to unmute and they have other questions they want to ask as well with respect to what Aileen and Matumba have just shared. Great. If not, I'm going to actually hand it over to, we have one additional topic. I think Michael is able to join and able to share a little bit more about the Entra integration with Azure Arc and some early feedback in terms of that experience. So with that, I'll hand it over to Michael to share and get a little bit of feedback in terms of, what our current Entra integration with Arc looks like. We know that this is something top of mind for a lot of you all. And so looking forward to your feedback and perspective there. All right, Michael, I'll let you share
Thanks,
more.
Arnav. Awesome. And so the way I'd like to do this, I want to sort of plant this idea and give it time to socialize. And then if you don't mind, I'd like to rejoin on the next occurrence and really dive into more details. So what we're thinking about is if you're an Azure customer, you may have seen this already, but you can, when you deploy a virtual machine in Azure, you can check a box that says, I want to be able to log into this machine using my Entra ID. And so what we would like to do is also bring that to Arc. Now this spawns off a big discussion, right? About are we going to be moving from Active Directory to Entra for our servers? Are we going to in the future be taking servers out of the domain and essentially using Entra to log into them and using, Azure policy to manage them instead of group policy and all of those things, right? So that's a big conversation. It's probably an hour-long topic by itself. What I wanted to initially think about is just are you interested in authenticating to servers in your data center using an Entra ID? And what we've heard from people already is, oh, this kind of sparks interesting ideas around things like remote locations. So maybe I have line of business applications that need to go at remote office, especially in retail environments, supporting point of sale, things like that. Boy, if I could eliminate my domain controller and maybe SCCM distribution point, you get the idea. I can really cut the number of VMs that I have at all these remote sites. That becomes very interesting. And that site only works if it has internet because our point of sale system is a SaaS model. You get how this conversation goes. So we're just interested in exploring that. So what I'm hoping is by that time, we should actually have the capability of logging in using your Entra ID to servers in GA. I'm hoping by the next occurrence, we'll have gone through the final release process and have that as something that you can start testing for your environments. But there's a specific question I wanted to ask this audience, and I'm going to ask if you can just put your short-term thoughts into the chat window. And then at the next meeting occurrence, you'll have had more time to think about it. And at that point, we'll actually do a screen share and walk through the details and have a bigger conversation. So the question is this: how do you want to do remediation? So when you're connecting to a server, then you are, if your organization has turned on the conditional access policies in Entra, and you can imagine, like, you probably have seen this, like maybe you didn't patch your workstation yet for this month. So you connect to Azure Portal, SharePoint Online, something like that. And it says, you need to make changes to your machine before you can access this because your organization requires device configuration rules before you can connect. So you patch, reboot, reconnect, you get the idea, right? That's what the per user remediation experience looks like. And the Entra team and the Intune teams have spent a lot of time figuring out literally what to put into those windows that hit the user when they need to take action so that their workstation can access those resources. So that part of it won't change, right? If you're connecting from Windows 11 to Windows Server, then it's your workstation that needs to be remediated. And the state of that server isn't part of that equation. And it's because what's happening behind the scenes is Entra is saying, before I will grant you an access token coming from your workstation needs to be in the right state so that your user can access your company resources, right? What about if you're connecting from a server? So imagine that you are on Windows 11, you remote desktop into server in your own data center. Now, we're not talking about taking that server off the network, right? This is not like the old network access protection where if your machine's not in the right state, it gets quarantined. That's not even on the table. What we're thinking about here is whether or not your user will be granted an access token to go connect to something else. And we don't even know how prevalent this is. But imagine, okay, I've got a remote desktop session on a server. Maybe I've got one of our operational troubleshooting guides is stored in SharePoint, and I want to go look up some code snippets so I can run scripts to try and diagnose a problem on this server. And if my organization has conditional access rules that say my machine has to be in the right state, maybe it won't give me that token. So I need to go either access it from my workstation or I got to fix the server before I can access SharePoint. So you see this little gap that exists. And our question is going to be, do you want the user to remediate the server? Or do you want to somehow redirect them back to their ops or security teams and say, yeah, I've noticed that this server is missing patches. FYI, we're not going to be able to access SharePoint from that server as a user until the machine meets the rules, which includes being patched. And you get the idea there. Like it's, we're not talking about taking the server off the network. It's just whether or not that user from a server can access other environments. And probably the most prominent production scenario is going to be going server to server, right? So in the future, it could involve, I'm a user and I want to access a file share on another server in my data center. If all of these machines are sort of like either using Entra Connect or even outside of a domain, you know, even if this takes 5 to 10 years down the road for it to get there, let's start having the conversation and figuring out the right way to land this. So I just wanted to plant that idea, give it some time to sort of marinate. And if you have any immediate reactions, please do put them in chat. Otherwise, maybe at the next occurrence, we can spend some more time kind of digging the details. What's it look like to authenticate to an Arc machine using Entra? And then what does it look like now that you're on that server to then authenticate to other resources using your Entra ID? And how would conditional access be used as a positive outcome in that experience? So. That's what I wanted to plant. I'm going to switch from this call over to the PowerShell community call. So if anybody would like to join me, I will put the link to the meeting in chat. You're welcome. Everybody's welcome to join the PowerShell community call after we wrap up here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Michael, for sharing. And I think a lot of wheels are probably turning with ideas. And so we're definitely excited to have you back next time to do more of the demo and deep dive and for folks to share their feedback as well. With that, we're getting close to wrapping up. Just 2 quick pieces of feedback or information for FYI for everyone. One is if you're going to be there at Microsoft Build, the upcoming conference next week, want to plug in and say, like, please reach out to us. We actually going to have a presence there and a way to connect with the Arc product group and user research team as well. So yeah, we'd love to see you at Build if you're going to be there. There's going to be Azure Arc and broader Azure presence there, obviously. So that's one. And the second piece is if you're actually interested in sharing more, contributing to one of these community calls as a customer or MVP, we'd love to have you share as well. So feel free to reach out to me directly if you're interested in participating and sharing more in one of our subsequent community calls. With that, I know this was a little bit of a lighter agenda today, but we'll give folks some time back. Really appreciate everyone dialing in. Have a great rest of your day. And if you're interested, there's the PowerShell community call as well that is right now as well. Thank you.